Kevin Costner's American Saga unfortunately flopped in theaters, and he has talked about that. It was an unexpected hit on streaming, it got number one, it stayed there for a bit, so that's a very positive note in the sort of miserable release it has had so far. As this was our last movie of the film festival after dropping the second half of the Joe Wright miniseries Son of Century, Ewan and I had enough time to watch the press conference for Horizon America Saga Chapter 2, where during the press conference, Kevin Costner explained that the 6 week pause between the first and the second part was a studio decision, and the reason the choice to delay it was also a studio decision, and that he truly wanted to explore the realness of the West and watch it from a woman's perspective. When talking about chapter 3 and 4, he has said both have completed scripts. He said, I don't know how I will make 3, but I will make it. And while he said that, he was kind of choking up, tearing up. He also said, all this disappointment just makes me want to try even harder, work even harder. A true grind mindset he has at the moment. He has also called the third chapter devastating and said chapter 2 hits even harder than the first one. So Ewan, the passion of Costner is certainly one that was felt at the press conference, is certainly one that was felt at the world premiere, which we both had the honor of being there. How did all that translate in the second chapter of the supposedly Horizon quadrilogy?
I'd be devastated if this doesn't get continued, because I got to see it. I got lucky enough to get to see part 1 in Gun at a press screening premiere for it as well, before everyone else had made their minds up about it. And I immediately realized there's a lukewarm response to it, including myself. I gave that one a 5 out of 10 and immediately said that I need to see part 2 to contextualize this film, because I felt a lot of the characters were lackluster. And then I get to part 2, and a lot of these underwhelming, lackluster characters become intriguing, and you kind of start living with them. Kev, you mentioned that what he establishes here, it doesn't feel like it's plot lines for characters. It feels just them living in the West. To create that sort of feel can be quite hard if you take a story that initially starts out pretty episodic, and then it becomes into a cross-cutting montage style for part 2 a bit more, where you end up focusing on less characters and finally get to focus on the female characters, when it felt like part 1 was more about them being introduced through male counterparts. It feels them kind of emerging, and still so many storylines are left up in the air that need to be continued. I was just blown away just by the look of this part 2 as well. The amount of amazing scenery where the camera work, just there's a shot with someone up high, and it just is a super not a wide shot, but the caravan moving forward in the background and someone in the foreground, and it looks like you could print it out and put it onto your wall, like every other scene. So great when it comes to the technical side. Apart from one performance from, I checked, she's 13 or 14, so I'm going to cut her some slack that that's tough to nail some of what is expected from her. She takes me a lot out of the story. Unfortunately, I hope with the time skip that was teased, that in part 3 or 4, I don't know how they're going to do it, because I think they hopefully are shooting soon. I don't know if they'll recast her role. Not entirely sure there yet. Because I don't think she can pull off a 24-year-old. Yeah, that was the only bigger critique that I have of the film. Everything else, the movie is going to get critiqued to hell, that it's cheesy as fuck, that it's indulging in some of these stereotypes of the Western genre. But I feel like it's such a dedicated, well-crafted love letter to this genre that if you're at all invested in it, it's hard to be cynical about it. Because if you embrace it, it has so much to offer. And I was truly impressed. And I feel so lucky that the 245 people currently having logged this on Letterboxd, which probably includes a bunch of people who also haven't seen the film, who just log it just for the sake of logging it. There's legit, I think, less than 1,000 people who got to see this film in Venice, and I feel very lucky that we got to be like a part of this history, who got to enjoy the premiere with Kevin Costner in attendance. Probably one of the most special movie premieres and film screenings that I got to be a part of. And Kev, I know you feel the same. What else do you have to say about part 2?
The second one is even better than the first one. And
Easily.
And that is because, he does say it hits harder. And it, like, you think, oh, he's building towards it at the end of chapter 2 it hits hard. No. Like, the first 20 minutes hit already pretty fucking hard. Because of storyline that happened. And, like we said, you think it'd be pretty cheesy, especially the thing he said about women's perspective, right? He actually acts upon that, and he does so very successfully. And there are some absolutely devastating things in chapter 2, so I can only imagine what he has in store for the third one.
Yeah, I don't know what he's got planned, because I'm a bit afraid, because I feel like there might be some really harrowing stuff that's going to happen to some of these people. And I felt, without spoiling anything, of course, I feel like a lot of part 2 sets, puts the pieces in place for stuff to escalate, where it felt like there was already like some, just by the world that they live in, there's some harsh realities. But once they come crushing down, as we've seen basically in the opening of part 1, can happen off screen with someone we don't really know. And now you do 2 like really long movies where you got to live with these people, and stuff like that could happen to them. That reality is like, that's going to be devastating, like you said. And yeah, I really hope we get to see part 3 and 4, because I feel like he definitely has another 2 stories worth, 2 films worth of stories.
Especially, I don't think that's a spoiler, but the second one does end on a montage as well.
Oh my god!
And that's,
I hated the one in 1, but in 2 it's good. I can't help but say it's good. It's good. It's really good.
Because before the screening started, before we went into the screening, I said to Ewan, what would you say if the second one ends on a montage as well? And he was kind of like, you know what I'm gonna think, but no, he actually thought something different. Yeah. I do want to mention, a lot of the reviews keep referring to Horizon, saying, "Oh, why is this a miniseries? This does not look cinematic." Huh? What?
I don't know what the fuck did they watched.
No.
This is one of the most cinematic things that I've seen on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you know what it is? It's not like in the same way cinematic as like something like The Batman or Dune, where like it's like overly color corrected in a way that is so over the top, but it essentially really relies on the beauty of nature and kind of men settling in nature. And that stuff to me is like, that's super cinematic. But if you don't feel like you need like a really shallow depth of field and like a blurry background that is definitely green screened, and that's cinematic to you, I guess we're not on the same wavelength. It has some of the most stunning cinematography I've seen.
You mentioned one thing in particular. I don't remember. I think you said like the skies, or like there was one thing.
Oh my god! Yeah. Well, there's also like the sunsets, or like I don't know, like all of it. It's hard to just like say one thing. Nature in this film is like, I didn't notice that as much in part 1. And it just feels like it's on another level, because we spent, again, no spoilers here, I think we spent so much more time with the caravan, where that was something that came into the film like an hour and a half or something that into the first one. To me, that storyline quickly becomes one of the more intriguing parts. And as we saw in the montage of part 1, so I don't consider this a spoiler, some of these storylines are going to merge at some point. And once that happens, like, I feel like there's so much good stuff that like is there. To me, Michael Rooker was probably an unexpected standout, and someone who I did expect more from was Sam Worthington. Not in a negative way of his performance. I'm just going to leave it at that. Just a lot of interesting choices. I also really dug Costner's storyline where he was there, because he feels like he's always a bit secluded. He like has his own thing going on, and I can't wait for him to for his story to involve. I'm trying to tiptoe around
No.
spoilers.
But to be fair,
but
I think
yeah.
the thing that should be said again, the second one, you do think again it's a Western. And Costner has mentioned multiple times, I am not building towards the gunfight. And I love that decision. I think many people hate that decision. I fucking love it. Because, the emotional depth that we get because of that choice, you really don't see it anymore. And I just fucking love this movie a lot. A lot.
It's not like you're not getting the gunfight.
No.
It just is not the central thing that it's building towards. It's building to something
It's not
larger.
the climax. It's not,
And a 100-minute movie can maybe have that benefit to like not build to some big conclusion. But this one, like you described it again, it feels like you're just a part of their story. It's not, they don't exist just in the narrative. It's like more about the West as a whole.
The way of life.
About like the pamphlet of like the new horizon, the new city being built and the settlements, and then also the native people. And I think it's, like I said in the first one, it's so hard to pull all of that off. And I like that he starts to focus more on the female characters. Yeah. In part 2, instead of just trying to grasp everything. I think there's way less of like the natives in part 2. I think they're going to be a bigger part of part 3, and I think that makes sense for this, because the conflict is still looming in the background there. But if you bring it to the forefront again and again, I think you're reducing their existence as well. You need to have like that breathe a bit on its own. And so far, I think he's done a good job of like that type of representation. Obviously, it's always tough to like work with representation there, because ultimately this is just colonialism, and they are invading their land. And yeah, I feel like so far he's had a good steady hand to like navigate that part of it as well. And like, to me, I think I didn't give him the sincerity or like the know-how to not just be invested in like the good old Westerns, and he wants to go back to that time. This movie is like some of the most sincere filmmaking I've seen in a long time, and it was hammered home before we saw the film by the press conference and the way that he talked about it. It essentially it comes all down to everyone just being decent and working together, and in a time where like we are moving towards that contemporary where everything is split into either this or that, and you can't be somewhere in the middle just existing with each other. This is the like antidote to this, and not that it's supposed to be this politically charged movie at all.
It isn't a political
couldn't
message.
Be further from that. It couldn't be further from that. But you can't help but feel that type of spark in this story through these characters that immediately makes it so easy to root and connect with them. Root for them and connect with them. Yeah, I'm going to rewatch this as soon as it comes out, and I wouldn't be opposed to maybe even moving it up. I said when I watched part 1 that I really hope part 2 is like an 8 out of 10, maybe even a 9 out of 10, and we're so close to that. So I'm truly impressed, and I think longer segment for part 2 of Horizon, but it deserves.
But it deserves it. It was the most special thing we watched at the film festival. Like also the fact, like I'm watching the movie and Luke Wilson is walking in front of me. It's like, oh wait, I'm really at a world premiere. Like that's the first thing that's like. So I really, really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait for part 3. Absolutely adored it. It's just we're watching the way of life, the realness of the West as Costner envisioned it, as he intends it. Characters come in and out of the story, and that is just the way it should be. And it's not forced at all. I absolutely adored it. 9 out of 10 for me. I can't wait to rewatch this one. I even ordered the 4K of Horizon from America because I cannot wait till it releases in Europe in November or something on physical media. I really, really want to watch it again. 9 out of 10 for me.